What is up, guys? Mike Merlinski here with the Metal Webzine. Welcome to episode 42 of All the Metal Podcast. Today we're discussing Black Sabbath's sixth and most criminally underrated album of the Ozzy era, Sabotage. I'm going to be calling my new friend Joe Hufford in just a moment. This is someone I met through Riley over at the Webzine. Never spoken to this person in my life. To my knowledge, we've never met in person. Even in passing at a show. So this will be an interesting debut conversation for us, talking about Sabotage. So let's give Joe a call. Thanks for tuning in. And sit back, relax, and let's get into it.
Hello?
Hello. How are you, sir?
Not bad. How are you?
Oh, doing well. I already did somewhat of an introduction, just saying that, we had never really spoken before. I don't think we've ever even met in passing at a show or whatever. But if you wouldn't mind just kind of introducing yourself and going into like a little background, especially if you have one like relevant to the metal scene, like any bands or anything like that you've been in.
Well, my name is Joseph Hufford. I'm actually just getting into the music scene a bit late, being that I'm past 30, but just getting into the music scene, picking up the keyboard, trying to start a metal project. I'm about halfway through writing it. I'm also the administrator for a video game studio, and I'm also in charge of the music score for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you talk about the game at all, or any of the games that you're working on, or?
The studio itself is in its infancy, and given that, all I can say is that it's PC games.
Mm-hmm.
And right now the project that we're working on is still in the works, so anything A is subject to change, B I'm not allowed to disclose it as of yet.
Sure. No, that's still really cool to hear. I've been writing, I've been on a couple different Amazon platforms the last couple years myself, writing some backstories for some RPGs, and also writing a couple novellas that flesh out the backstories of a couple games that have been picked up by some companies. So, no, it's a really cool thing to get into. So, we are here to discuss Sabotage, and you, when Riley introduced us, she told me that you are so passionate about this album, so I'm really excited to dive in with you. Are you ready? Are you ready for the Sabotage portion?
Yes.
All right, cool. So, okay, starting off, many fans have said that the growing tensions in the band are audible on this record. In what ways, if any, do you think this is true?
I think there's several lyrical mentions to it. I know one of the lines says, "Why don't you leave me alone?" I think the writ goes into it. Practically half the lyrics are just showcase the tension growing in the band. Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to read through the liner notes. I'm just kind of, what I think it is that when I first heard this album, and when I first started reading through the lyrics and really studying it, I don't think I really took, I was so much younger, so I don't think I really took into account, what was happening in the members' personal lives, so that it's worth a good reread through, I guess. Why do you feel this album is so underrated, and why is it your favorite?
It's my favorite because being someone that struggled with mental issues for a good portion of my life, it's really a portrait into insanity and mental health decline. The track Megalomania just really speaks to me. All the tracks speak to me in their own way. I feel it's underrated because it's not the classic raw formula that Sabbath used for the other albums prior to.
Sure.
And they branched off in a way that a lot of your hardcore fans don't like. As soon as you put in any sort of synthesizer,
right,
a lot of your metalheads are going to turn their head off the bat without even keeping an open mind to it.
Yeah. We just talked about that on the last episode too, about the synth parts and how people do have a habit of snubbing those, for sure. So go ahead. Did you have more?
No, that was it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you wanted to discuss Superstar, like, specifically.
Yeah, I noticed in your article you said you kind of didn't get it, and I just wanted to touch on that. I feel like I do.
Sure, I would love to hear it.
It feels like it really illustrates the descent into insanity almost just as well as Megalomania, if not more. The progression and tempo, and the epic sounds of like the choir thing that they put in there, and then in the middle it just goes off into a little flowery, wondrous thing, and that's how insanity is. It's like 1 minute it's just this epic march of trudge and doom, and then all of a sudden life is just this wonderful, beautiful thing, and then you're back into the epic doom march. And I really think Superstar really showcases insanity quite well.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. That's it's an interesting way of looking at it, I should say. Oftentimes when I listen to music, I'm approaching it as a drummer or a guitar player or a lyricist, and I think in terms of structure and just the decisions made when writing the song. So I don't always immediately grab a hold of, well, what sort of a picture might the structure of this song, be painting or be illustrating, what's the deeper message behind just how this song was structured. Sometimes I just think about the choices other musicians make versus choices that I would make, so sometimes things don't resonate with me because I'm just thinking of it, in those kind of mechanical terms. But no, that's a really interesting take. I've read a lot about this album's correlation with the human psyche, especially pertaining to the song Megalomania, like we already said. So yeah, it definitely holds a lot of weight in terms of just exploring the human psyche in that context. So that's really interesting. That's something that's worth taking a deep dive on. So if you have them, I don't know if you have them listed or if you just wanted to go with your gut, but with Sabotage, your favorite song, your favorite riff, and your favorite lyric.
My favorite song is Megalomania. My favorite riff is From the Thrill of It All. So part of that opening riff is just, I like it. It gets stuck in my head. And, I just have to go with the whole lyrics of Megalomania. I really I'm completely in love with that song.
Sure. Yeah, that's Ozzy's, Ozzy's portraying it, but it's more like a, lyrically it's a descent into chaos, mental chaos, if you will. That's at least what I took away from it. And it's an interesting song visually, even when you listen to that intro and you hear that wailing coming up from under the guitars and just the way it's all arranged, that's a part of a song that paints a clear picture for me, like what might be going on or what should be going on in people's minds when they hear it. Cool. Talk about a few bands. Oh, by the way, you submitted that photo. Are you a guitarist as well, or?
That's a ukulele bass.
Very cool. Yeah. I thought you had it zipped up in a gig bag there, so I wasn't sure. That's really cool. Yeah. What other instruments do you play?
I primarily focus on the keyboard. Seems to jive with me the best. I do poke around with a few other things here and there, but mainly the keyboard seems to be what jives with me. I'm still just getting into music, as I said before.
Yeah, cool. Ukulele bass. Very cool. Okay, yeah, talk about a few bands you got into because they reminded you of Sabbath. I did get into Angel Witch a little bit. They kind of reminded me of Sabbath. I guess the main one I'd have to talk about is Monster Magnet. I'm big into movie scores and soundtracks, and I kept seeing Monster Magnet pop up, and they had a lot of reminiscent things. And then I actually got into them because of the Sabbath tribute, the Nativity in Black tribute. I don't know if you're familiar with either of those. They had a lot of heavy hitters like Static X, System of a Down, and Slayer.
But those, it's a pair of tributes just to Sabbath, and that's what introduced me to Monster Magnet. And I like the way that they classify themselves as stoner metal.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, Monster Magnet. Yeah. Monster Magnet. I used to dabble in. Back in my. I don't know. I mean, Monster Magnet even had a couple, like, radio singles that, like, I would hear fairly often. So that was when I dabbled with them. Like, this is years ago, back when I used to give a shit about the radio. But, no, Monster Magnet's a cool band. Yeah, you mentioned, the Nativity in Black thing. Like, yeah, that's cool. That's definitely cool. I definitely got into Sleep because of Sabbath. Just a lot of, like, really heavy doomy stuff that reminded me of that when I was trying to get into those genres in the first place. So wait, I'm sorry, who did you mention right before Monster Magnet?
Angel Witch.
Angel Witch, yeah. Yeah, they are a cool band. I remember, I think I've only listened to that band on cassette. Like, I have a few tapes, and I don't think I've taken them in other formats. But no, definitely a cool band that, like, I've just kind of listened to in passing, but never really, got into, like, completely. I love Cathedral. Like, I got into Cathedral because of Sabbath too. That was another one. Cool, man. So, okay, here's something that everybody tells me, and I just wanted your take on it. Is this Ozzy's strongest vocal performance of his era with Sabbath?
I'd say it's a tie between this and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath.
Yeah, I would actually go with Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, but everybody kind of, well, majority of fans, like, say that he peaked on Sabotage, but I would almost give it to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I'm glad you're looking at those two records as well. Do you have a personal runner-up to Sabotage out of Black Sabbath's catalog?
Probably have to be their self-titled, to be honest. I dig those long jams. It's not many bands can make me sit there for a 15-minute song. So...
Yeah, that's true. There's got to be something special about you, especially today. Like for people getting into this music, for the first time today, like with how predominant the internet is and how people are exposed to music, and how everything is so convenient now. Like, people have even less of an attention span now than they did before. So, like, if you're gonna hear a band for the first time and it's a 15-minute song, like, they really have to rope you in. No, I love the self-titled. I mean, personally, I'm a Dio Sabbath fan, so, my favorite Sabbath record is fucking Dehumanizer. But, I mean, when it comes to... No, if we're just talking about Ozzy stuff right now, I will always... It's not my favorite of the Ozzy albums, but I love the self-titled. I'll always respect what the self-titled did for metal, or did for music. I will always... stand by the Wizard, and just the way that they were kind of tapping into a new genre, but how seamlessly they incorporated blues with that. I love how the different perspectives of music and the different genres and subgenres, even for 1970, I like how it all just kind of coalesces there. It's a really, really cool album, even having two covers on it. So Sabbath's music takes on many different forms on this record. I mean, Sabotage, we were just talking about the self-titled, but Sabotage is a pretty diverse album in and of itself, which is what we've been saying. And, the deep dive into Insanity and all that, so it has to take on many different musical forms. Which is your favorite musical vibe on Sabotage? If you had to gravitate towards one sound over another, the blues, the hard rock, the proto-thrash?
I'd say the blues sound that they capture in the riff, the writ.
Right.
I love the way that Ozzy's voice gets in there, and you can really hear the emotion in that one. It's you can tell it's personal. You can tell the one thing about this album that stands out is that it's personal for the musicians. A lot of personalized albums, such as Saint Anger, kind of get demonized, and it's the artists letting their emotions out, and you really get a look at what they were thinking at the time. and how they were feeling.
Just making sure I have everything down right for when I go live with this. Yeah, I mean, in terms of all the different roads that are traveled on this album, I mean, I love Symptom of the Universe. I love that opening riff, and I think that back then, a lot of people heard that opening riff and didn't know what to make of it. And I think a lot of thrash and even a lot of traditional heavy metal that followed after Black Sabbath's Sabotage kind of took a cue from that song, because so many bands have referenced it over the years. So that's just another example of me, like, really gravitating towards something that Sabbath did because of how it influenced so many of the bands around them and so many bands to follow. Like, you know, there are not too many bands out there with this extensive of a discography who are responsible for so much, you know, going back so far, and it's just really inspiring when you do a deep dive into Black Sabbath as a whole. That's why I wanted to do this series, because, like, Sabbath in general, like, not even, like, in my top 5 or in my top 10, like, all-time favorite bands, but they're probably, to me, they're probably the most interesting band and the most trend-setting band, you know, and it's just, I don't know, I was just really motivated to really explore Sabbath in a way I hadn't before. And it's convenient that they have these 19 studio albums. I mean, I could probably do this series for even longer if I wanted to just, you know, take a look at every single release, just because they've tossed out so much. Like, do you have any favorites that are not studio albums, like just specific releases by the band?
Reunion. There was 2 studio tracks on there. I think they came out in, like, around 1990, the early 90s, so somewhere in there. And there was 2 studio tracks on there, Psycho Man and Selling My Soul. And I think they were the last ones recorded with the 4 original guys, because they had all of them come back, because in 13, Bill Ward wasn't there. So I think those were the last 2 tracks recorded with the original 4, and they're phenomenal.
Sure.
Plus, it's a great live double disc overall.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, so many different things I want to talk about right now, but I don't want to, like, I'm trying to go, you know, by album, like each episode specific to an album, so I don't want to get too far. But I do have a lot of things, like, there are a lot of interesting parallels, like, even from looking at the self-titled debut in 1972, 13 in 2013, there are a lot of interesting, like, lyrical and musical parallels, and I think that was part of the band, like, bringing things full circle and trying to, like, 13 isn't even that strong of an album, but, like, there were a lot of artistic choices on that album that kind of spoke to me, because it felt like they were bringing closure to the whole thing. So I don't know. Yeah,
there was definitely some musical touches on the older songs, like Planet Caravan and whatnot.
Right. Even the opening riff and end. I said I wasn't gonna get into this. I guess I am. So, like, the opening riff and end of the beginning is, like, a definite callback to the opening riff in the song Black Sabbath. And, like, even lyrically, even lyrically, like, there's so much symmetry there, and even the way the drums come in and, like, the wailing vocals and how it kind of uses this progression, it's called the Devil's Interval. And so, like, when you look at both of those songs, it's like, it's almost like the same song, but they're existing in different parallel universes. It's a really fucking cool artistic choice that I know was consciously done to bring closure to, you know, 43 years of shit. So, really cool, really impressive. Let's see. Oh yeah. Here we go. You'll like this one. Many fans criticize Am I Going Insane for its abstract, I've heard this and I've read this like thousands of times. Its abstract pop sound and how different it is from the rest of the album. So You obviously love this song, so what do you love about this song?
Now, I will say when I was like 12 or 13, when I first picked up We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll, and I heard that on that, I didn't get it, and the sound kind of bugged me a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then hearing it in the progression of the album itself, that's where it actually shines, because if you listen to the whole album in order, as we stated, it's kind of a progression into insanity. The Am I Going Insane? I think the radio references, they're being pressured into trying to put things on the radio, and it's just not them. They're just, they're dark. They want to do their long songs. They want to do what they want to do. And the pressure from the companies, I think, were making them insane, and I think that's why they have that radio on there. It's just a hunch. I don't actually know. But the pop sound almost kind of illustrates that insanity. It's like it's kind of like the Joker's laughing. Yep. The madness. It doesn't mean it's not dark. It doesn't mean it's not threatening, but it's also amusing in a way. It's whimsical in a way.
Sure. Yeah, I totally get that about it. When you do listen to the whole album, when you listen to each track consecutively, one flowing into the next, the song definitely makes more sense. And it was an interesting radio hit because, it has those poppy chord progressions and like a pop style like song structure to it. But if you listen to like the effects on the vocals, the guitar licks themselves, the lyrics, like it's still all very strange and it's very spacey. But like you've already touched on many times, that's what insanity is, and that's how maybe I'm actually just picturing this, I'm actually just coming up with this now, but I just found the perfect way to put it into words for myself. Like, it's like, Am I Going Insane? The way that song was recorded, the effects that were used, the lyrics, the production, everything. That song is how an insane mind, or a mind that is suffering, might perceive what we would consider to be a perfectly normal radio hit. So I almost feel like that is just the Black Sabbath perspective on what a radio hit should be. I don't know. I kind of lost track of my thoughts there. But I mean, I'm getting it. Just talking to you about it, I'm getting the song more. Because it's a different interpretation of a radio hit, of an ideal single. And it just has that, it almost has that, mentally, like a filter over it for a mind that is suffering, almost. It's, I'm gonna have to listen to it again to kind of arrange my thoughts perfectly and kind of, align what I'm saying. But yeah, I have a lot more respect for that song after this, 5-minute talk about it. Let's see. Oh, are you... We touched on this briefly, I think. Are you a vinyl connoisseur?
I used to be. I lost... Basically, I gave away all my possessions and kind of went to live as a vagabond. So I don't actually have vinyls anymore. I don't have basically anything anymore, to be honest.
I was just going to ask you to plug your favorite record store, like going back to when you were buying stores, or back when you were buying records all the time, or however often you did. I'm just curious on, where you did your shopping. This is just something I do on the show. I try to plug record stores.
Honestly, the ones that I used to hit up for CDs all closed. I don't remember half their names, but I'd go to this one in Henrietta or that one in Victor or whatever, and they all closed. It's kind of it's sad. It's very sad. I used to hit up the clearance racks and FYE and get like $2 Judas Priest CDs. Right. And now most of the stuff I find now is at like antique shops and yard sales.
Right. What about Record Archive out your way?
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there. They've got good stuff in there.
Yeah, it's a huge store. I love Record Archive. I try to make it out there every time. I mean, at least they're still open. I try to make it out there at least once whenever I get out to Rochester. Like, that is, it's an impressive record store, an impressive, physical media store in general, especially for around here, especially for, like, the Western New York, Central New York area. Like, you don't see too many stores like that of that size, that magnitude, and they were having shows in there for a while, and they got the cafe bar set up in the back. Like, it's just a really cool thing to have around here. I've always loved that store.
Well, I think the history of Rochester helps with that. I mean, it has been one of the bigger rock and roll hubs historically. Like, Kill 'Em All was recorded here.
Yeah, Kill 'Em All. I was just gonna say that Kill 'Em All was recorded in Rochester. Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, we've reached the end, and this is probably the hardest question I'm gonna ask you. If you had to cut one song from Sabotage, what would it be?
And this is the one I spent the most time on. The other questions took me about 5 minutes to answer when you sent them to me. This one I milled over for hours.
Sure.
And, if we had to cut it down to 7 tracks, I would try to sneak that little instrumental into the end of Hole in the Sky.
Yep.
Just to not lose that. Because, as much as, like, that's not my favorite little flowery instrumental that they've done, but it really does illustrate a nice little, like, sort of Alice in Wonderland tumble into Symptom of the Universe. Like, you get a nice little fall there, and then that riff for Symptom hits you, and it's just like you hit the bottom of the well now.
Sure.
I'd have a hard time with that one. I'd have to say, actually, Hole in the Sky.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bigger song, so I'm surprised to hear you say that. Like, and it's not just, I don't just like it because it's a bigger song that I'm more familiar with. Like, I really, really love the lyrics. I love the guitar riffs. Like, I think it's a banging album opener. If you want,
the whole album's good. It's a hard question.
I know, it's hard. It's hard to pick one. Yeah, and if we're talking about like those flowery moments, like across instrumentals across all the albums, my favorite is probably Fluff. But if we are to cut a song from Sabotage, yeah, I had a hard time with this one myself. I don't think I even answered it. So it must have been hard for you to say Hole in the Sky. It's a banging opener, but I totally get why you picked it because, for all the songs on that album, Hole in the Sky is probably the most straightforward and the least interesting in terms of, taking a taking a psychological look at it or taking an artistic approach to it to try to peel back those onion layers, like Hole in the Sky is probably the most straightforward, like bare bones song on the record, so that's actually a really good pick. If I had to take, go ahead.
I'd say Hole in the Sky just feels like it belongs on like volume 4 or whatever. And I'm not knocking the song. It's a great song. It's put together excellent. It's got good lyrics. Ozzy's performance on it is great, but it just doesn't seem to quite fit with the rest of the portrait of the album. Just not as much.
Right. I probably have to cut Superstar, but only because I didn't fully appreciate it the first several times I heard it in life because I was listening to it as a musician and not as a music listener, if that makes any sense. Or I wasn't taking an artistic approach to the listen. I wasn't trying to figure it out. I was trying to, it was mechanical, the way I was looking at it. Yeah, and I regret that,
A lot of music is about emotion and it is about the way it makes you feel, and a lot of people and a lot of critics do lose sight of that. That's the whole point of art is it's the artist's emotion, and then it's the beholder's emotion, and sometimes they match and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, certain songs by certain bands really hit me that way. Like I hear a riff or I hear the lyrics. and it just resonates with me, and like this whole image, you know, this complete picture, or almost like a movie, plays out in my mind, and like I have this whole artistic interpretation of it. And then other music I hear, and it just totally falls flat on me, you know, regardless of what the band meant by it. And I think that's just, you know, that's just getting further into, you know, the age-old debate, or it's not even a debate, it's just the truth. You know, everybody's different. Everybody has a unique perspective on the world, and, you know, everything's subjective. So, no, that's, yeah, good choices, for sure. Was there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on? Like, anything that we didn't discuss prior to this, or?
I guess the only thing that really stands out with Sabbath that I'd want to touch on is the way Iommi shaped the sound of metal. I don't know if you touched on this in the earlier interviews, but there was an accident. I read a lot of interviews with Sabbath. There was an accident when he was young that took a couple of his fingertips. And he had to replace them with little synthetic pieces there, and the notes he plays hurt. Mm-hmm. And that tuning that
that's why they drop tune. That's why they drop tune to create the slack on the guitar. Yeah.
And basically, the sound of metal was born from that man's pain, because every note still is painful, and he's been playing for how many years? That was 1969. Yep. So that's all I would want to say is they're an impressive set of musicians, and
yeah, we did.
It still blows my mind.
Yeah, we did talk about the accident a few times during the first 3 episodes when we were talking about the self-titled, Paranoid, and Master of Reality. So, like, across those 3, we brought that up a couple times about how the accident was responsible for the drop tuning, and the drop tuning was essentially responsible for the metal sound that we know today. And so many bands are using C-sharp standard now that it's just... It obviously it would have existed, but it wouldn't be predominantly used in metal had it not been for that man's pain, like you put it. All right, so no, this was a good talk. Looking at the schedule here, what are your other favorites? What are your other favorite records by Sabbath?
Like what other Dehumanizer? And I do really enjoy Dehumanizer. Time Machine, then there's a later one, I think it's just called the Dio Years. It's like a compilation, but there's a few tracks that aren't on other albums,
right.
Like Ear in the Wall off of that one.
Right. I'm trying to figure out when... hey, did you like Eternal Idol, or... Did you... Let me see what I have left. Because I'm trying to bring it back for at least one. Did you like Seventh Star or Eternal Idol?
Not particularly. No.
Okay.
And I'm also not as familiar with those ones, to be honest with you. A lot of those other ones that Dio wasn't involved with kind of went over my head. Like, I had a Born Again cassette at one point, but... Oh, yeah,
Ian Gillan, yeah. That's a great record. Ian Gillan casting like Deep Purple vibes onto the band. That was cool. Dio's my favorite vocalist of Sabbath. So like I'll talk to you about Dio Sabbath all day long. I just don't have... You know what? I mean, is it safe to say you're a fan of Dio Sabbath?
Yeah.
You love the 3 records? Okay. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I mean...
You're aware of the devil you know,
well,
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Devil You Know, that's going to be... I'm actually going to do that one last. Even though it came out before 13, I'm actually going to do that one last. I do consider it, like... even though it's technically not Black Sabbath, to me it is Black Sabbath, so it is going to be part of the show. Yeah, would you want to come back for Mob Rules? And, yeah, you know what? Yeah, would you want to come back for Mob Rules?
Sure.
Yeah, that would be cool, yeah. So, obviously, we have a few records to go before we get to Mob Rules, so we gotta do Technical Ecstasy, Never Say Die, and Heaven and Hell after this. But then I'd love to have you back on if you would want to come back on for Mob Rules.
Absolutely. Sounds great.
All right. right, sounds good. Well, thank you for your time, and thanks for the photo and everything else. I will let you know when this episode goes up.
All right, thank you.
All right, have a good one.